This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to order Jamie Glazov's new critically acclaimed jihadist psychopath, how he is charming, seducing, and devouring us. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Jamie Glazov Moment. Tonight, trans activists say that protecting girls from mutilation is anti-transgender. My friends, the left's vicious war continues on women and little girls. Tonight's Jamie Glazov Moment is credited to Penny Starr, who wrote an article at Breitbart recently titled, "Activists, Bill to Protect Minors from FGM is Anti-Transgender," end of quote. So credit goes to Penny Starr, fantastic reporting at Breitbart. My friends, this narrative continues of how evil the left is and how much the left actually hates women and how much it wants to inflict violence on them, and it's always succeeding in doing so. There is a recent bill in Wyoming legislation that's attempting to criminalize female genital mutilation. And female genital mutilation, excuse me for saying such a thing in today's world, but female genital mutilation is perpetrated against girls, mostly Muslim girls. And that's what the Glazov Gang, for instance, has been attempting to do for years, is trying to protect the victims of FGM, especially Muslim girls. We're not saying we're not trying to protect all girls from FGM. We're just saying because it's mostly Muslim girls in terms of statistics and percentages that they are the greatest victims of this. And very interestingly enough, we're always called Islamophobic and we're accused of hating Muslims, and yet we are consistently trying to protect Muslim people from Sharia law, and that includes, of course, protecting Muslim girls from Sharia law. Now, this is great legislation in Wyoming. It has bipartisan support. Both Republicans and Democrats in the state are backing HB 127, which classifies FGM, among other things, as aggravated assault and battery. It mandates female genital mutilation to be reported as child abuse. It provides an avenue for victims to recover damages, etc., etc. So fantastic stuff. This is very good. Very interesting, but totally expected. We've done many shows on this. Just Google Glazov Gang FGM, and you will see that the left is always trying to stop this. It's trying to stop efforts to protect girls from female genital mutilation. Isn't that interesting? You know, the left, is supposedly for women's rights, but it's trying to stop protecting Muslim girls from female genital mutilation and non-Muslim girls from female genital mutilation. Now, this bill is being attacked by transgender activists who allege that the bill discriminates against those who might want surgery to alter their biological sex. So we have to kind of... In comes this individual called Tara Meir, and she is the policy director of the Wyoming Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. And she has attacked the legislation as having the potential to place, quote, draconian limits on transgender people. Democratic Representative Sarah Burlingame protested the language of a sex reassignment clause in the proposed bill, saying that it will stop sex assignment in its tracks. What is going on here? See, this is such a dystopian world, a Kafkaesque world, surreal, a bizarre world we have entered. It's hard to make sense out of any of this. I will let you do the investigating and to look into this, but I will crystallize the main issue here if we're having a hard time understanding it, because I couldn't figure it out at first either completely. The debate over the bill on social media crystallizes what this is all about. There were tweets, for instance, about Renee Bergstrom, who suffered FGM as a child. Now, tweets from many trans activists claim that Bergstrom's use of the expression female genital mutilation is transgender exclusionary language. That's because the trans activists argue not all women have vaginas as women, and not all women have vaginas. See, what we're really getting to here is that the men who identify as transgender, and the empirical reality has showed this, they have consistently expressed hostility toward anti-FGM activists, who many of them have themselves been victimized by this barbaric practice. Now, these men who identify as women maintain that they also have a vagina. And so it is, quote, transgender exclusionary language to talk about and to be against female genital mutilation because, again, not all women with vaginas are women and not all women have vaginas. How do we make sense of all this? I'm going to... For instance, a woman, Jana Cornell, for instance, this was on social media, was told by Canadian Canadian politician Morgane Ogre that the practice of FGM does not target females because, quote, nobody knows your sex except how you express it as gender. Let me try to crystallize this because what's happening here is that the trans ideological movement is in the way of protecting girls, especially Muslim girls, from FGM. And let me just say here that it may be practiced, and it is practiced among other cultures, etc., but it's much easier to stamp this barbaric practice out in non-Muslim communities because there's no theological basis for it. The problem is that in Islam, it is mandated and sanctioned by the Islamic texts themselves. This is the problem. So now here's the key. The transgender ideological movement is in the way of protecting girls from female genital mutilation because overall, if we're just going to synthesize this with one idea, with one fact, it doesn't like the implication that girls have vaginas. Okay? So the trans movement doesn't like the discussion of FGM, let alone even the opposition to FGM, because there's an implication that there's such a thing as a girl with a vagina. They don't like that. They don't like the concept of opposing female genital mutilation because not all females have vaginas. Now, however that sinks into your head or into my head, there's something very, very wrong happening here. And so when we see the trans ideological movement doing this, we realize what it's really about. Now, look, there are transgender people out there, and nobody is saying here at the Glazov Gang that there shouldn't be compassion and acceptance in individual cases. This is a whole other issue about loving people and being accepting and being compassionate. What I'm talking about is the transgender ideological movement. The trans movement is a totalitarian force. And there are many that argue and have pointed out that the trans ideological movement is ultimately, again, a totalitarian movement. It's a movement waging war on humans, on our civilization, on the family, on God's creation, and on gender. It's a war on men, and it is especially a war on women. Let's just think one example here for a minute, for food for thought. Because of the trans ideological movement today, we see men saying that they are women. They're entering sports competitions, And they're defeating women in these sports competitions. They're pulverizing them in wrestling. And they're crushing their skulls in mixed martial arts fights. The left is getting what it wants. This is not a coincidence. It's all calculated. This is what the left wants. Because ultimately, the left is really about a war on women, because the left hates women. And so this whole trans-ideological movement, it makes complete sense that men are becoming women and crushing their skull in MMA fights. It's just one example of what the left is trying to achieve, because it's a war on humanity. It's a war on men and on women. And in this particular case right now, it's a war on the safety of little girls, because the trans movement is trying to stop female genital mutilation. Now you have to ask yourself, overall, what's happening here? What's happening here is that the left is showing its true face. Read Penny Starr's article at Breitbart. It's titled "Activists Bill to Protect Minors from FGM is Anti-Transgender," end of quote. It's at Breitbart. And I explain in my book, She Had a Psychopath, what the left really is, why it's allied with Islam, and why, among other people and groups and individuals, why women suffer so terribly, including not just grown women, but tragically little girls. We'll see you on the next Jamie Glazov moment. Good night.